The signals watch at Midway kept a running log of Wake Island's radio traffic. By the closing weeks of 1942, the transmissions from the atoll were routine, predictable, and steady, as they had been since the Japanese garrison settled in a year earlier, and the operators tracking those transmissions understood what the steadiness meant, a command that expected nothing unusual from the ocean around it. The ocean was the point. Wake sits more than 1,200 miles west of Midway in the Central Pacific, that's surrounded by water in every direction, and its defenders had concluded that the combination of distance and dark made the atoll safe from land-based bombing at night. To prove them wrong, an aircraft navigator had to solve one of the harder problems in wartime aviation, placing a formation of heavy bombers over a specific point in the open Pacific at night, using only dead reckoning and the stars, after more than 1,000 miles of featureless water. The 7th Air Force assigned this mission to the 307th Bombardment Group, which had arrived in Hawaii in October and November of that year, converted to B-24s from B-17s, flown patrol missions off the West Coast, and was still waiting for its first combat assignment. Wake is a coral atoll. 3 islets curve around a shallow lagoon in a horseshoe shape, and all 3 together cover less than 2.5 square miles. In daylight, from altitude, a formation correctly positioned within a few miles of Wake could see the reef and the lagoon both. At night, over open ocean, the atoll produced no light, no radio beacon, no electronic signal. A bomber arriving in Wake's vicinity after dark would find the reef only by the sound of surf from directly overhead, which meant being within a few hundred yards of the shoreline. A crew positioned 20 miles off at the moment of arrival would find nothing, and they would not know they had found nothing until they turned back with their bombs still aboard. Dead reckoning accumulates error. A bomber flying at cruise speed for 7 or 8 hours across the Central Pacific, tracking heading with a magnetic compass and airspeed with a pitot tube, built uncertainty with each passing hour. The compass deflected from magnetic north at certain headings and latitudes. Airspeed differed from ground speed once wind drift was added. A navigator who had underestimated a moderate crosswind over several hours of flight would arrive miles from where his log placed him. Star shots corrected the drift. The tool for this was the bubble sextant, which worked by generating an artificial horizon from a spirit level, a small liquid chamber with an air pocket kept centered by gravity, functioning like a carpenter's level inside the body of the device. A navigator looking through the eyepiece found a chosen star and rotated a prism until the star's image aligned against the level indicator, then read the angle off graduated scales. That reading was a line of position, a hyperbolic arc on the chart saying the bomber was somewhere on this line. A second star produced a second arc crossing the first at the actual position. Each 2-minute shot required holding the star and the indicator aligned while the plane vibrated, banked, and pitched. The computations that followed required working through pre-calculated sight reduction tables in the Air Almanac, converting the angle into a charted line by hand, by instrument light, at altitude, in whatever temperature the B-24 reached at cruise. The navigator's station was not heated beyond what the crew and equipment generated. In December, at 12,000 feet, gloves were not optional. When an overcast held, the stars went away and the position estimate grew less certain with every hour. The formation deployed from Hawaii to Midway, cutting the overwater leg to Wake from roughly 2,200 miles to 1,260. From Midway, the crews were briefed on the target and the expected defenses. No briefing could tell them what weather the Pacific would give them that night, or how many star shots the navigators would manage to take. And they lifted from Midway's runway on the night of December 22nd, turned northwest, and began the crossing. Below, the ocean showed nothing distinguishable. A dark surface with occasional reflections when the cloud cover broke, but no features and no reference points. Nowhere to look for confirmation. The navigators ran their dead reckoning logs, noted each change in heading and each wind estimate update, and compared the running position against star shots when the sky allowed. 2 sources of information, one continuous and one intermittent. Both agreed when the technique was sound and the stars were out, When the overcast held, the stars went away and dead reckoning ran on alone, accumulating whatever uncertainty the weather decided to add, and the navigator worked with what he had until the next break in the clouds. In the pre-dawn hours of December 23rd, the bombers crossed the reef. The Japanese anti-aircraft batteries on Wake opened fire approximately 30 seconds after the last bombs were away. The garrison's logs noted the time the response began and the time the raid ended, and the gap between those figures was the closest the after-action documents came to acknowledging what the mission had proved. Wake's defenders had maintained a standing night watch for more than an hour before the bombers arrived. The watch had not located the formation by sound or any other means. The 3/7th placed its load before anyone below registered the attack. 90% of the assigned target area struck before the Japanese response began. The bombers turned east and flew back to Midway without loss. January brought more missions. A smaller group found Wake and bombed it. In the same period, another group flew the correct course for the correct duration, reached the area where the charts placed the atoll, and turned back, having found nothing in the dark. The Pacific did not get smaller. What found Wake in December was not a system that produced the same result under all conditions. It was a combination of sound technique on the specific crews who flew that night, workable weather that allowed enough star shots to keep the dead reckoning close, and navigational judgment that some men had developed and others had not. On nights when those conditions did not hold, the island vanished into the ocean around it. The same techniques that solved December did not solve January for every crew that attempted the crossing. The May mission brought 18 bombers and struck Wake again. The defenders by that point maintained a standing night alert, and the anti-aircraft response was faster than December. One plane went down over the target, the first combat loss for the 7th Air Force in the Central Pacific. The 307th moved to Guadalcanal in February of the following year. The Wake missions stayed in the group's record as the action that had named them the Long Rangers. The navigators who had solved December carried their skills to different theaters across the South and Southwest Pacific, from the Bismarck Archipelago to Yap to the Philippines and Borneo, working the same instruments against the same problem of darkness, ocean, and a target too small to see until the crossing was already done. Wake stayed Japanese through 43 and 44, the garrison cut off by American submarine patrols that intercepted the supply ships. The island bypassed because the campaign had moved past it, and no strategic argument existed for a costly assault. By the war's closing months, the men on Wake had been rationing food against a situation with no good resolution. The formal surrender came on September 7th, 45, 4 days after Tokyo Bay. Rear Admiral Shigematsu Sakaibara was subsequently tried for war crimes related to the execution of American prisoners held since the fall of the island in December 41, and was executed in June 47. The signals log from Midway that had tracked Wake's routine transmissions through the autumn of 42 went dark on the atoll's surrender. The radio room there was American property again. Nothing about the geography had changed. What had changed was a specific body of technique held by a specific group of navigators for crossing 1,200 miles of dark Pacific and finding a 2.5-mile target in the pre-dawn before its garrison knew they were coming. What this channel traces is how that technique was built and then extended across the rest of the war. Subscribe if you want to follow where it went.